Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to my friend Sarah Robb. Welcome, Sarah.
I'm very excited about our conversation. Thanks for having me on today.
Nice to have you back. You've been on, I think we did a talk about a year ago.
Yeah.
Right. So Sarah is a NLP practitioner, a coach, and what else have we got?
A speaker.
A speaker and an author.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So first question for you, what is present for you right now in your life?
Straight into it. Love it. Well, there's been something that I've been sharing a lot with my clients and in my own world recently, and it's a quote that I've kind of been living by recently, and it's that small hinges swing big doors. Do you know what that means?
I haven't heard that one before. Tell me more.
For me, it's really, think about it, right? It's like small hinges swing big doors. It's all of the micro actions in our life that start to open doors for us. And a lot of people think that change is really about these big actions and doing these big things. But change is actually created through the micro and through the consistent and repetitive actions. So small hinges swing big doors is really around how we can create change by taking micro actions, and that leads to big change. And I've definitely seen that recently in my life.
Yeah, tell me more. So where has that been showing up for you? I like that quote, by the way, but yeah, where's it been showing up specifically?
Well, as you probably know, Bianca, over the last few months, my Instagram account's blown up, which has been very exciting.
That's an understatement. What did you go from,
3,000 to we're almost at 70,000 in 3 months. And it really is that quote, me consistently showing up over 4 years, even when I didn't feel like it, even when I really didn't want to. And these micro actions started to all compound. And I think a lot of people underestimate the power of consistency, and so for me, small hinges swing big doors.
Yeah, I love it. This whole social media growth. So what I know about you, because I met up with you just before you blew up, which was amazing. Seeing you from the early stages till now, you were putting in the work long before the results came, right? Long before you got the followers, long before you were flooded with DMs, the work was being put in. And one thing I really took from it, and I also believe in, is yes, those small actions, but trusting the process, because there were moments there where you could have folded, perhaps when, as we both know, putting out content, when it doesn't land the way, or you don't get the amount of engagement you want, but you were consistent with it.
Yeah, and that's why consistency is the key to growth. I knew that, and I knew that I needed to keep taking action despite how I feel. And I think a lot of people get caught in I don't feel like doing it, I don't feel like posting. Whereas for me, I really knew that despite how I feel, I was going to show up, and that's really how that change has happened, is that I did it despite whether I wanted to post or not.
I love it. And you did it even though there was the result and the thing hadn't appeared yet. And I think a massive component of that, not just with social media, but in general, any growth we go through is that trusting in your potential and that vision that you set for yourself, really taking steps forward without knowing how it's going to happen, but trusting that it will happen when it's right.
And I wanted to share with people a little bit more, last year I had a social media coach, and they taught me a lot of great things around algorithms and stuff. And I just kept saying to myself, nothing was happening, nothing was changing. I wasn't getting any new followers. And every day I just said to myself, Sarah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I just kept showing up, as you said, trusting the process, knowing that if I kept showing up all the time, something was going to happen.
And, you said small hinges. What is it?
Small hinges swing big doors.
Love it. It's sort of the same as 1%, right? 1% each day, 1% better. It's not in the big actions we take, it's in the micro moments. And I'm teaching my clients that as well when we're brain retraining, showing up consistently. When you go to the gym, showing up consistently.
Yep.
That is it. That is the key, right?
Consistency is the key, and we struggle with consistency as humans. Everybody, we work on the path of least resistance in the mind, so people struggle with consistency. And if you can work on anything in your life, consistency will create change, and it doesn't have to be the big things. And that really is what encapsulates that quote, small hinges swing big doors.
And what I loved even more about your success, literally overnight success, well, plus all the work going in behind it, was also on your mum's birthday, is that right?
It was a little bit wild. If anyone believes in synchronicities, it was one of those moments where it was all synchronous and it all fell into place. And I was having a really hard time for January, February, March of this year.
Also, people might not know that you have lost both of your parents. So if that helps, it makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, for those of you who don't know, my father died when I was 20 in an accident, and my mum died when I was 26 from a brain aneurysm. So life has been challenging in my 20s, working through trauma and grief. And as Bianca was just saying before, the post blew up on my mum's birthday, which was a sign that, they were really supporting me on this journey, and it was all, really beautifully aligned. But as I said before, this January, February, March, I was having a really hard time in business. I was having a really hard time. I'd had a massive hacking on my Facebook account, and I was just feeling really gutted that I was showing up and nothing was happening. And then boom, just like that, just kept showing up despite how I felt.
Yeah. And
it all started to fall into place.
And what was your, because I haven't asked you this before, what was your intention of, like, in game? I guess the more followers you have in business, the more you can put your work out there. But we also need the why behind it, to work towards any goal. There has to be a why behind it. So the growth for you to get to offer your services to more people, I'm assuming?
Yes, and I guess people need to also know, like, it's not actually about the following.
Yeah.
And the following's just one metric. Like, don't actually work to the following. It's like the impact that you're having. Like, you can have massive impact with small following. So I do want to say, like, it isn't about the numbers. The numbers can be a bit of a vanity metric at times. For me, though, with the following growing, it was really around the fact that I knew that my work was bigger than me, and that what I was speaking about had impact, and that it wasn't just me who was in this. And so when the following grew, I was like, this message is hitting more people, which means more people need support. And so for me, it was really based around impact.
Yeah, cool. So since the growth, you've been working with more people.
Yep.
And which is really cool. And I want to know, what are you seeing with your clients at the moment? Maybe similar to what I'm seeing. What sort of consistent themes are coming up?
Yeah, I'm sure we're seeing similar things, Bianca. A few things that I'm seeing, especially in high-performing women, is this shooting on themselves, this guilt, this like real high pressure on themselves to have it all. And I'm also seeing a lot of women and men, we're tying our success and our worth to our output. So how much we're doing is making us feel worthy. So many people are shooting on themselves and like getting themselves in this spiral, and then it leads to burnout. Are you seeing similar things?
The shoulds.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's go through an example. An example of what someone might be, the thought process.
Yeah, thought process wise, it's like, I should be doing this, or I should have done this. It can be both future and past. The past stuff is often what creates the guilt. And the future stuff creates guilt too. A lot of women just using the word, I should have done this, or I should have been going here, or I need to do, it's just the language they're using with themselves, and often unaware they're even doing it.
Yeah. I think a lot of shoulds, it should have been that way, or it could have been that way. I often teach my clients that it's sort of anchored in the past, because you're replaying a situation from the past which wasn't how you wanted it to go, but it has happened. It is what it is. Yeah. And it's like you've got like an anchor, like a ship, an anchor in the past, and you're constantly being pulled back to that. But yeah, also the shoulds about the future. That to me is fear-based, anxiety-based, the good girl syndrome. Yeah. That a lot of us women, as I've spoken on many of these podcasts, have to unlearn. There's a degree of unlearning it consistently, just because we are socialised as women to put others' needs first and be everyone's person all at once.
100% agree. And the key, if anyone's listening to this, is that we really need to bring awareness to this, and it's kind of the first step to creating change, is around bringing awareness to this internal dialogue that you've got going on. Because ultimately, as well, we need to be honest with ourselves and realise that we are creating a lot of our own suffering.
Yeah.
And a lot of that suffering is coming from the way we're speaking to ourselves, the narrative that we hold, and how we're showing up, beating ourselves up every day. I say to my clients, like, no amount of self-beat up is going to change the outcome. And often we are just doing it on autopilot.
Yeah, like this piece of being self-critical and constantly working against ourselves. A lot of the time we're not even, unless we're really starting to take a bird's eye view of our thoughts and really starting to witness our thoughts, we're not aware of how often we can become self-critical throughout the day. And because the brain takes the natural negative bias, most of us, that chit-chat is working all day, and that's spiking the stress response, which has other impacts, right?
And then we're wondering why we're burnt out and not feeling good about ourselves, and we've got no confidence and we're not enjoying life. So it all starts with the way we speak to ourselves. And when we start to shift the way we relate to ourselves and the way we speak to ourselves, honestly, our lives begin to change.
Where do you think women are the most self-critical towards themselves?
Oh, there's so many different. I mean, you can look at physically and how women are treating themselves when they look at themselves physically in the mirror. Also, as I said before, a lot of women are tying their worth to how much they're doing and their output, whether that's with their kids or whether it's in their career. It's like, I'm only worthy if I'm doing something. It's like when I slow down and rest, there becomes this guilt.
Yeah.
And that's a massive thing I'm seeing at the moment.
So much on that as well. And that's why I actually started self-sourced, like being anchored in yourself so that you're not constantly grasping and reaching outside of yourself for that validation and safety. Because that's what it is. When I look a certain way, I'll be happy. When I've done that job, then I can rest. When they're happy, then I'll be happy. It's all this constantly grasping outside before you feel that level of security within. And we have to start validating ourselves and practicing that self-compassion, which starts, I think, you know, we had this conversation behind the scenes around some people, to be really loving towards yourself is a massive step, but it can just start by saying neutral things.
100%. And one of the first things about building the self-compassion muscle, and what I've seen in a lot of my clients is when I ask them, like, what does self-compassion mean to you? And a lot of them are like, I don't know. And it's really starting to actually sit with that and go, well, what is self-compassion? To me, self-compassion is treating yourself the same way that you would treat a friend, and being kind in your internal world, because no amount of self-beat-up is going to change anything. It's actually only creating more suffering. And along the way, it's a muscle, and it's something that we can build over time. And we have to bring this into our awareness. And I think that is the starting point, right?
So for you, because there could be someone listening that's like, yeah, I get that, because you guys have been talking about this and, you know, you've done it for a few years. But if someone's at that starting point and you think back to I think you were 20-something when you came across this work. I was late teens, early 20s as well. What was that first step for you? What was that aha moment? You're like, oh, actually, hold on. I seem to be really critical to myself. Did someone have to point that out in you from like externally, or did you just have this moment where you started to witness your thoughts and you're like, this is not beneficial?
Totally. A little bit of a mix of all of that, to be honest. And I will share a little bit about my journey, and we can loop back to the self-compassion. So for me, after my mum died, I found myself in a really challenging spot, like daily panic attacks, like not being able to get out of bed, which also, if you've had a really close person die, know that it was also normal. However, I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I've got to make a change. And when I was at traditional therapy, like traditional counselling, I was like, I'm really sick of talking about my mum dying. Like, I need some substance. I need some tools. I need to do that inner work. And so I went to Australia, did my NLP training, and I got a really great coach over there. And she fundamentally said something to me that was that light bulb moment. And she said to me, you know, Sarah, you know what? You're not changing. You're ultimately choosing. And when I first heard that, I got like a shiver through my body, like, oh, that's so confronting. So confronting to hear that. I was like still really early in my grief journey, except I went away and thought about what she said. And I thought about it some more. And then I had that light bulb moment, and I was like, she's right. And it was from that day forward that I chose no longer to be the victim of both my parents dying. I chose healing over suffering, and I chose to let that experience make me instead of break me. And from that, I realized that self-beat up is like a choice. Like, no one else is choosing to beat you up and turn your internal world. Like, we have to realize the power of our choices. And so when we make better choices lead to better outcomes. So that was kind of the starting point for me, because then I started to realize, like, Sarah, you can choose to beat yourself up every day, or you can start to choose to work this self-compassion muscle. The other thing that I learned along my journey, which has been really powerful, is that a lot of women don't realize that we are ultimately, in some way, shape, or form, gaining from the way we speak to ourselves. Like, it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's safe, it becomes on autopilot. So we just keep doing it because ultimately a part of us is also gaining from it. Do you agree?
Totally. Connection, I think, is a massive piece.
Yeah.
You know, if we're in a group of people that are nitpicking their body, then, what are we going to do? Going to do the same. If we're complaining about something, again, there's some connection in that too. It's the same with being critical of ourselves. And I think in New Zealand as well, we could really hone in on that, particularly because we have that self-deprecating humour, but we also have tall poppy syndrome. So, you get too high up, you get knocked back by other people. We do that internally to stay connected to I was going to say the tribe, but, to our community, which I think, again, we have to identify and have awareness around that so that we don't fall into that loop cycle.
Yeah, and for anyone who is wanting to build that self-compassion muscle, these are the first things I would say to start with. Firstly, become aware that you're doing it. Secondly, start to understand, well, what is self-compassion? Like, the way you speak to yourself, would you treat your child or your best friend the way you treat yourself? And then actually the hardest and most confronting question that you have to ask yourself is, what am I currently gaining from doing this?
Yeah.
Because there is ultimately something you're gaining, whether it's safety, whether it's comfort, whether it's familiarity, whether it's the fact that you don't even know the identity or the version of you who doesn't do that. So ultimately you keep doing it because you don't know who you are without doing that.
Completely. And I had when I was first learning about this idea, and let's be honest, we're humans, so we definitely, and especially me and you, I think, because I'd see us both as quite driven people, so we have to, that has its pros, but it also means anyone who naturally relates to being, having high expectations of themselves, I think you've got to be extra mindful of what's going on internally because there's no rush, you're on your own timeline, right? But one thing when I first was learning about these concepts, and I was like, I get the idea that like talking to yourself is a good thing, but my aha moment was realizing when I had chronic pain, I was not just chronic pain, my whole teenage years leading up to that, I was so critical towards myself and my body. And I remember one of my coaches at the time was saying, when you're mean to yourself, your brain doesn't know the difference between your own thoughts or a bully, and that brain's threat perception shifts that body into the stress response, and that exacerbates illness and physical symptoms. And I just had that aha moment. Oh my gosh, it feels like my body's been under stress, but I've been the creator of part of that stress as well. And it was a massive, when I understood that and the impact that my thoughts and my compassion could have on my physical health, then I had an incentive to shift that, because I knew if I shifted the way I related to myself and how I talked to myself, then my body would benefit from that.
I totally agree. And one of the other quotes that I often share is that the words you speak become the house you live in. And so the words that we hold in our internal narrative, don't underestimate their power, because they hold so much power. And for me on the healing journey after mum and dad died, it's like I really flexed that self-compassion muscle. I was going through enough pain and enough trauma from that happening that beating myself up along the way was just adding suffering on top of suffering on top of suffering. And so part of how I've got from where I was to where I am now was really starting to treat myself and all the versions of myself with love and compassion, and that has brought me so much healing.
Yeah, I love that. So we've got like common themes, needing more self-compassion. We've got letting go of the shoulds and the coulds. Is there anything else you're seeing?
Oh, there's a lot of still burnout, anxiety, overthinking going on. And on the overthinking thing, like I used to be a chronic overthinker, and I used to tie my self-worth to my output. So everything that I'm seeing in women, it was like it's an old version of me, which gives me a real ability to help them, because I'm like, I've been in your shoes and I actually know how to get out of there, because I had to get myself out of there. And I know you're the same. And that's why I love the work we do, is that it doesn't come from a textbook, it comes from our lived experience. And I think there's so much power in having that lived experience. Overthinking, it's chronic out there. Like, this is the other thing that I'm seeing, is that women are trying to heal logically, and healing doesn't come through thinking. And too many people are thinking their way through life, but really life is about feeling the emotions and being present, being in our bodies and fully experiencing life, not just thinking about it.
Yeah, but let's just set the stage as to why this is even happening, right? And I've talked on this, and I'm passionate about this too. We live in a world that values doing and using our logical mind over our feeling body, and that conditioning that we all have to get through to even get to that point of allowing feelings in, or even trusting ourselves, is a lot. It's a lot. I think people, again, I can relate to that so much. Just like my intellectual brain was always on working, and I spent more than half my life, up until I got sick, to be honest, with chronic pain, completely detached.
Yeah.
Like I almost felt like I had no body, because I was that out of touch, not only with my body's cues, unless I was having some symptoms or something going on, and I'd be frustrated at my body, but also any feelings, any relationship with my feelings, because we're not also taught from a young age the importance of emotions, or how to even navigate emotions. We are taught to stuff them down or ignore them, or just to get on with it, but we're not taught how to use them as messengers to figure out what they're trying to communicate to us.
I totally agree, and especially in New Zealand and Australia and a lot of other places as well, is like we have had that mentality of like, just get on with it and keep going. And a lot of people haven't been modelled by their parents or their caregivers how to emotionally regulate, me being one of them. And there's no blame here. We can't point at our parents and say, it was your fault, I don't know how to emotionally regulate. Why? Because they didn't know. And so how can you model something that you don't fundamentally know? So there's no point looking and pointing fingers at people. We just have to come at that realising that everybody is doing the best they can with the resources they have available. But when we know more, Bianca, we need to start doing more in terms of like understanding this and actually getting a hold of it. Because for me, overthinking was a coping strategy. I had an alcoholic father. Actually sitting in my emotions as a child was actually not safe. So I learned how to live in my head, because it was safer for me to think my way out of it. And so then I became an overthinker, and then I thought about it. When I actually had to step back and feel, it was a really hard thing, because it wasn't always safe.
Yeah, so I want to, again, break this down, because I'm thinking here, okay, there's people listening, I get feeling, how do I actually do that? Where do I start? What's the first step? So for you, as someone who had an alcoholic father, you hadn't been modelled it wasn't safe to do that, did you first have to go back and feel the pain from those earlier years, or did it just start with you creating space and moments in your day-to-day life where you would allow the uncomfortable feelings to come up?
Well, actually looping back right to what we were speaking about before, is that I had to create a level of awareness. Before I could even start to feel, I had to come at this from a lens of self-compassion. Because if I was coming up from a place of self-beat-up, then trying to feel my feelings, like, oh, that was just a recipe for...
You had to change your relationship with yourself before you could even change your relationship with your feelings.
Yeah. And then I started to learn more about myself. I started to learn more about emotions. And as I started to learn more about emotions, I started to go, well, I am safe to feel my emotions, because I actually fundamentally started to understand they are energy moving through your body. Emotions equal energy in motion. It is safe to feel them. This is normal. This is a natural thing. So as I started to grasp this, I was like, okay, Like, it didn't make it easy for me to step into the emotions, but because I started to understand them, I was like, I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah. And I think actually, just before you continue, like decoding and actually having some literacy, is that the word, around emotions. For example, anger is a feeling that can come up when our boundaries are crossed. And if you actually think about it, okay, that makes sense. Like my body, I'm trying to protect myself.
Yep.
Grief, of course, is a natural response to something you lose or that's no longer there. So it's actually seeing the meaning behind them for a start. And I think that part that comes a bit further down is like, how does it show up in my body, and getting used to those sensations. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that in there.
I think it's a really important point. And part of the journey when you lose both your parents is sometimes the emotions come washing through and you can't stop them. So I had to do the work because I was in a position in my life where if I didn't, it was going to be, not a great place for me in terms of where I was within my life. So for people who are wanting to start to understand how to emotionally regulate and how to actually sit in their feelings, my first thing is that you don't have to jump straight in. Like, it even comes back to what I was saying before, like just the small things. Start gently stepping in, start learning a little bit more about emotions, start actually starting to maybe do a little bit of a practice, whether that's through, starting to do a little bit of breath work or starting to just gently open the door to understanding a little bit more. And the more you gently open those doors, the more it's going to open up for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree.
What would you say would be a way if somebody's listening and they want to start learning how to feel their emotions?
Well, I think, first of all, it's not, for me personally, I think my belief system has always been there's a healthy medium between thinking and feeling, because we don't want to be dragged around under the water the whole time. My personality is not that type, so I've been having to I could probably go extremes either way, to be fair, but finding that healthy medium. So knowing that an emotion takes about 90 seconds for that whole loop to occur in your body, the stress hormone, the cycle, I think the first thing is that learning, like if a feeling comes up, the feeling's okay, it's that secondary thing around it. So I shouldn't be feeling like that, or oh God, just carry on. That's the part we need to work with first. So looking at our stories around emotions. How do I feel towards anger? I remember hearing a few times growing up, just stop crying. That was, how it was for me when I showed emotion. So I had to actually look at that and be like, hold on, oh yeah, that makes sense as to why I don't allow that to come through. And I can change that, I can relate to it in a different way. So I think first of all, it's looking not at the emotion, it's the second part and how we relate to feeling emotions, like you talked about. And then for me, I've again spoken on this, but it's actually opening up a little bit of space when usually you would shut down. So let's say you start to feel a certain emotion and usually you'd squash it down. Maybe you just allow it to be there for a minute or 30 seconds, or maybe, you move while it's coming up, just expanding your capacity a little bit without attaching all the stories and the pushing it down and I need to move on. That, to me, is progress.
I totally agree.
I had to do that in my early days of grief where, you get so many emotions come up out of nowhere, and a big part for me of being compassionate with myself was actually making space for myself to feel it and not think I had to be anywhere else or to be doing anything else or to get on with it and just hold it all in. I allowed myself to feel, whether it was tears come up or anger, I'd speak it out loud, or maybe get a pillow and move the pillow or move my body. It's a massive part of me, because as someone who naturally again lives in my head, being able to get into movement, and whether that be shaking, breath, dancing, all this stuff has really helped me allow the physical sensations to move through my body. But yeah, just simply creating space, a bit more space than you usually would. And then if you're really wanting to look at your why that come up, like why you were feeling a certain way, perhaps there was a story behind it, do it after. Do it further down the track through journaling, and thinking about if it's something like anger that's coming up repetitively, think about that and explore that when you're not in it. a bit further down the track.
Yeah, and it's that reflective piece. I totally agree with everything you've said. For me, exactly the same. It's like we attach a meaning and a story to our emotions, and that's often what creates a lot of the problem. It's like tears don't mean sadness. Like all of the things that we experience are just emotions, energy moving through us. So for me, just really allowing myself to actually feel without this doesn't mean that, or it doesn't mean this is happening, and actually just knowing that part of healthy healing is allowing it to flow through your body.
Yeah.
And that's what's helped me the most. Like sometimes I'll find myself in tears still for ages, except instead of me sitting there going, oh, Sarah, this means that you've taken 2 steps backwards and something's wrong, and why are you feeling like this? Like your mum's been gone 6 years. I just sit there and I'm just like, allow yourself to feel it, Sarah. Move through your body. This is natural and normal. It's just energy moving through. So again, it's coming from that self-compassion lens. And it allows me to sit in it, and it allows me to gently move through it without the noise and the inner critic. And I truly believe that suppression leads to depression.
I agree too, but I do think if you are a woman or a man, of course men definitely too, listening and you're like, yeah, but it's so hard and it feels so exposing, that is also so true. But I find like the more honest and the more we can allow in emotions ourselves, the less masks we wear. It requires so much more energy to move through life with these constant walls. And I'm still on that journey of like allowing my heart to be open through many trials and tribulations I've moved through. It's a constant process. But if you'd spoken to the version of me just like you, especially my teenage version, I would say, versus now, I do relate to emotions so much differently and have that self-compassionate lens so much more. So it's just a work in progress.
And I think it's important that people know, like, just because you and I run businesses and we help people move through this in their own life, and that's what our businesses are, like, we are still on our journey, and we are doing the work. And just because I think a lot of people think like we've got it sorted now. It's like we are still navigating this daily, as are you. And so it's important people know that we're still working on ourselves.
Always, yeah, and there's seasons, but it's always like getting curious as to what's going on and how it's showing up in my reality. Absolutely. I think it does get easier with time because choices and realizations happen more frequently, and I talk to my clients about that. The more compassionate you are, the more that pathway is firing, the easier it is to activate that. But yeah, absolutely, like everyone's human. There's so many things that have been reflected back to me recently. Okay guys, so we just had a little bit of a tech blip. The memory card was full. So we're taking off again. We were talking about emotions. Sarah, how does getting out of your head and into your body look day to day?
Yeah, good question. And to be completely honest, Bianca, it's like a daily work on. When you become an overthinker, or when you live in your head, like, you've really got to create awareness. Like, sometimes I can even still feel myself resisting getting into the emotional place. For me, it all starts with that awareness and really being aware. Like, I often feel it like in my head, or like I can actually sense when I've been in my head too long. I start getting irritated, I start getting frustrated, and those are kind of the signs for me getting back into my body. My favourite way of getting back into my body is nature. Nature is our biggest healer.
Yep.
And whether that's swimming in the ocean, getting out in the sun, going for a walk, getting on my mountain bike, like just moving the body in nature is so simple yet so important for the journey, and I know that you would agree. How do you do it? How do you get out of your head into your body?
I definitely agree with nature. In fact, it was a few weeks ago when I was still up in Auckland. I just was having a week. Yeah, it was irritability. I think it was things coming to the surface, and I just decided one morning, I got up at 6 o'clock, drove straight to, partly because of Dion, who I had on the podcast. He told me to go to this place called Fairy Falls. It was a waterfall. I got up there, no headphones. That's another thing, not having this constant music or podcast, because that can actually cause us to overthink when we're trying to get out of our head.
Totally.
And I walked through this track and into the waterfalls, and it was exactly what I needed. So that was like a really stark reminder to me that nature is everywhere and you need to take yourself into it more frequently. for me, like I said, just creating a bit more space and changing that story I have with my emotions. So allowing my emotions to come, not making it mean anything, having that self-compassion. Journaling is a big one for me. I go in and out of my practice depending on where I'm at.
Yep.
But if I need a outlet, sometimes journaling can be really beneficial, and I often will free journal in the sense of like I'll just put my thoughts on paper, let them all come out, and that's a way for me to process onto paper and not have to overanalyze it at the time. Also dancing. I started dancing and I'm already missing it. It's only been a few weeks since I've been to dance and won't be able to now because I'm not in Auckland at the moment, but that was a huge one for me to connect rhythm, music, movement, get out of my head, into my body, and slow down with that movement, because that's really helped me understand and have awareness around where I'm holding tension in my body. And often another thing that I'll do, which I take my clients through, especially in NLP sessions, if they feel a particular sensation in their body, let's say it's something here, I'll take them through a process where they will close their eyes, they'll tune in, they'll start talking to that part that they can feel, or maybe it has a colour or something, a texture associated with it. Yep. And we sit with it. Well, they sit with it for a moment and they just allow it to be there.
Yep.
And that is where it dissipates. And then, we can find out a bit more if there's a message associated with that. But it's, again, just creating that awareness and that mind-body connection between sensations and your experience.
I love that. And it's a really important conversation because, as I said, when we started this conversation, like, too many people are trying to logically heal, and healing is done in the body and it's done through actually feeling. One of the points that you made before I think is really important that I'm seeing a lot of too is like so many people consuming. Like, you know, we're on a podcast right now, but it's really important that people understand that knowledge isn't power. It's the application of the knowledge and the integration of it.
Oh my gosh, say that one again.
Knowledge isn't power. The application of knowledge is power. And so for me as well, it's like I'll have these periods on my journey where I'll be consuming and learning, and I'll have periods of integration, which is like no new books, no new podcasts. It's actually taking what I've learned and putting it into practice. Where I'm seeing people so not getting the results that they want is because they're logically learning, but they're not integrating what they've learned. So for my clients, when they go through the breakthrough blueprint, it's really like there's a lot of great learnings in there. However, I just want you to find what resonates and double down on that and get good at that one tool or get good at that thing. Because I think so many people are like going through life with this tick box attitude of like, I've got to learn all these things, but then they do nothing with it. And it's like, even with my degree, I'm like, I spent 5 years getting my psych degree and I haven't applied it. What I have applied is the things I've learned after that.
Yeah.
And so people really need to understand that the integration of the tools is where the power lies, like actually putting it into practice rather than just knowing it, because knowing without doing is not really knowing at all.
Yeah, and it's also looking at where your power lies, which is in your intuition and your knowing. So I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this before as well, seeing everything that other people are doing or seeing what's out there, reading all the books, doing all the things, and doing, there's that keyword again. And that takes us out of our own knowing and gut instinct into getting caught on that hamster wheel of what I should be doing again. So like you said, pick a few, trust your intuition, go at your own pace, and know that there are seasons for going internal, and then sometimes give yourself a break. Like, you don't need to be constantly, I think it's actually a real issue when people are constantly in this self-analysis, because again, it gets us into our head. Like I don't tend to have that personality so much so either, but I know a lot of people can get really addicted to the personal growth and the next level.
I've definitely been in that realm, and I've noticed myself getting addicted to it, and that's why I've really been aware of that. And there's times where it's so important to step back from this work and have fun and live in the moment and do life. And there's, as you said, these seasons of, you know, healing and going inwards, and there's these seasons of being just who you want to be. Is like really important. And another thing on that, like seasons, is like obviously we've got spring, summer, autumn and winter. And I talk to my clients about how, you may be in a season of your life that is different to the external world. Like right now I'm in summer in my own internal world, like put in all this hard work. Like January for me was actually winter. It was really hard. It was dark for me. But now after that, I've kind of gone through the spring and I'm like getting the bloom of all of that hard work. So we all have these seasons, and it's really important that everyone knows that there's seasons in your life and just know where you're at.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that also, if we're talking about women specifically, that goes in tune with women's bodies.
Yep.
And we have to really learn our the uniqueness of our own cycles and seasons, because we're encouraged to operate at the same rate consistently.
Yep.
And that isn't always the best output.
Totally. And for you, what season are you currently in? You've got changes coming on in your world.
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like my seasons have been very like small, fast seasons consistently. I am stepping into, actually, for those of you who actually no one on this podcast will know, I'm heading overseas in 2 days.
Ooh.
I'm heading to Thailand for a while, Vietnam, and then I'm heading over to the UK. And I'm actually unsure how long I'm going to be in the UK for. I will be back before the end of the year, and I'll be working over there. But I'm going to take a jump, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And I think that's so important. We can talk a bit into how courageous it is to really trust in yourself and trust the process. And, so many people are stepping back into comfort rather than forward into courage. And you going over and doing this trip, I know it takes a lot of courage to do that. And are you also seeing like women playing it safe? Like I'm seeing a bit of that at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think we'll speak on that courage first, because I think that's one thing I first learned through grief, is that life is short. And I really made a promise to myself that I will follow as best as I can, where logistically possible, my internal compass. And I've had to really anchor in myself, because a lot of people don't realize, or I don't know if I've shared this before, but I've had to grieve a lot in my life, not just people, but also places. Growing up, I moved consistently. After the earthquakes, there was a lot of things that I had in my life to that point that were no longer there. Like there's constantly been these layers of shedding behind me with my mum, the closest person. All these things have kind of led me to this point where I've become really comfortable, or been forced to, again, we learn the lessons through doing, of anchoring in myself, not in a particular place. And of course there's been moments where I've really wanted to be settled, and there's been moments where I have needed that stability in a physical place. But the more I tune into my own soul and my knowing, the more I have come to this acceptance that I do like to travel. I do like to have experiences and adventure and do those sorts of things. And I am 33, single, no kids, no house, probably all the things that you would say conventionally, you wouldn't probably ask for. Yeah. But I have really grounded in my knowing, and knowing that, kind of like you, it's inevitable. It's inevitable that I will have my vision that I don't share too much out loud, because I think it's powerful keeping it within. But I know taking steps forward for me just looks like staying on my own path and building that home within myself. And that is courage. And anyone that's taking courageous steps is essentially building home in themselves through self-trust, through doing the things that light them up.
Totally agree. And so many people care about what other people think, and there's a lot of like comparison and a lot of judgment, and there's a lot of women who are taking actions based on what other people think or don't think. And I had this conversation with a client the other day, and I really said to her and helped her ground into the fact, like, only take advice from people who either inspire you or who are where you want to be. Like there's so much external noise from the cheap seats, I said to her. Like there's too much noise from the cheap seats. And I think you and I, we wouldn't be where we are today if we kept listening to everybody from the cheap seats. It's like, it's like you've got to take that courageous action despite what people think, despite
and it's
what
their
your
fears. And sometimes you have to listen to them. You have to acknowledge people's perhaps fears or their concerns, but ultimately you do know best.
Exactly. Or it's their projection, because part of them wants to have that in their life. So they're projecting their own kind of belief systems or wounds onto you. So, you know, it's really important that women understand, like, this is your life and you get to have one shot at this life. And if you spend 30, 40 of your years worrying about what other people think or what other people are going to say if you go out there and start the business or if you do this, it's like, life is far too short to worry about what everyone thinks. Care about people's opinions if they inspire you or if they're where you want to be, and stop taking advice from the cheap seats.
I
really
agree.
important.
And I think actually two things I want to speak on. This thing around building capacity so that you can make these moves and make these choices. It's all about sitting with the discomfort, feeling your feelings, making your choices. All these little things that we've been talking about are what give you the capacity to take the next move so that you don't self-sabotage, because we kind of have that upper ceiling limit, right? And I think we can self-sabotage easily if we haven't built those small micro moments and that capacity that shows us what's possible.
Agree. And that ceiling is like, you've got to know when you're at your ceiling and when it's time to kind of break through that and when it's time to start shifting your identity. And I think that with the recent growth for me is like really starting to step into the new identity of who I was. And even when I was on the way here, I was looking back at photos of me from a few years ago, because it's today was my 1,000th post, and I was like, wow,
go
that's
girl.
like, I did the maths, it's like 1.8, like every 1.8 days I've posted over the last 5 years, and if anything, that to me is consistency. So
You show up, you show the fuck up, you really do.
Yeah, and now, you know, I'm reaping the rewards of showing up consistently and taking and stepping forward despite what people think and despite what, you know, the judgment that was coming from those early years.
That was the other point I wanted to touch on, is that the more you are anchored in yourself and you know, you do listen to yourself and you follow what lights you up, or you just make choices with yourself in mind as much as other people, I think the more you come against. And a lot of people, I think, they start, but they stop when they do get the projections, or they stop when someone says that one comment, or they stop when perhaps the results haven't shown yet. And I think a lot of this, and it kind of comes back to building that capacity, is learning to sit with the discomfort, or just learning to make space for all of these things to come at you, but still be grounded in who you are. And that comes down to self-trust.
And that trust is so critical. Again, it's like the muscles that we want to keep building consistently is like self-compassion, self-trust, self-love. Like once you just keep flexing those muscles, like positive change is inevitable, right? And it's so important that people really understand that it's not about the big things. As we talked about right in the beginning, it is about all those small actions in the right direction. And how I got to where I am over the last 5 years is just consistency. And it really is a powerful thing that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, definitely. I've loved all these conversations. Anything else you want to touch on? Any final words, parting words of wisdom?
Final words of wisdom. Man, we could be talking for hours, to be honest, Bianca, couldn't we? We could go in all different directions. I guess if I was to sit here and kind of give my parting wisdom to any woman who maybe doesn't feel good enough, or maybe they're overthinking, or maybe they've listened to this and gone, oh, I'm trying to logically heal, or I don't know what I need to do to stay consistent, is like, for me, I've been in your shoes, Bianca's been in your shoes, and I just want you to know that wherever you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. And it's teaching you things, all of your things along your journey are learnings, lessons, and insights. And it is our responsibility to kind of do that healing work and to unpack the bags of the past. But you don't need to do it all at once. Like, me and you have been doing this work for over 10 years. And so if this is the start of your journey, just take it gently. Like, just stay curious, stay open.
Curious is a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. Ask yourself, deeper questions, like just take it at your own pace, because ultimately this life is yours. This is your journey, no one else's journey. And I just really want you to start flexing the self-compassion muscle, because it's going to make this journey a hell of a lot easier. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to be on the podcast today and share a little bit more. And I know there's so much that we could talk into. And I mean, maybe we could give a little bit of a wrap up of some of the key points if we were to say from what we've talked about, like someone's listening, but then going, how do I put this into action, or how do I stay consistent with it? What would you say if someone's listening and wanting to do that?
Well, I think the overall arching thing that sticks out for me is that self-compassion. So again, just treating yourself like you would a friend, I think, and starting to have that in the back of your mind, or just starting to have that awareness around where you are more critical, and that can be that starting point of just looking to interrupt that voice, maybe give that voice a name. I don't know if you've done that before. And yeah, I think that's an overarching thing that we can all work on, including myself. It's a consistent thing. And the other thing that stood out to me was the shoulds and the coulds, and us women, what we carry, the responsibility, and really looking at that as well. Where in my language through the day, in what circumstances is this coming up? The shoulds, the coulds. And that will give you a clue as to what triggers or what you need to work on, or what perspective shifts you can take.
I love that. And if I was kind of wrap up what we've talked about, it would be a really around understanding that it is the small things that make the big difference.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe from this podcast, if you've listened and there's been something that sparked in you, is like, actually just sit with yourself for 5 minutes after this and reflect. What were the things that I can start just taking a 1% shift on? Is it the self-compassion? Is it, you know, just starting to realize like what opinions should I take on and which ones shouldn't, and actually doing that self-reflective work. And again, it doesn't matter if you listen to this podcast and then you go away and go, oh, they talked about some great things, and then you just carry on with your life, because it's the integration is where the change starts to happen. So what was the one?
Even getting into nature, like we said, getting into the body, getting into nature, or just, thinking about how you deal with emotions. That could be.
Totally. And it is in that self-reflective space that things start to drop in and where we begin to create change.
Nice. Thank you, Sarah. So where can people find you, and what offerings have you got on at the moment?
Yes, so people can find me at my Instagram, Spring with Sarah. It'll be interesting when you watch this. We're currently at 69,000. So when you watch this, check it out how many we've grown since when you listen to this. Spring with Sarah is my Instagram. At the moment, I'm running the Breakthrough Blueprint for high-performing women. Now, this is specifically for women who overthink, don't feel good enough, self-doubt, confidence, and living in their head. And it's a 12-week program where we really begin to delve a lot deeper into some of the things that we've spoken about today. I'm seeing some amazing, incredible results out of the women in the program at the moment. So if that is of interest to anyone, feel free to reach out. It's always a pleasure to come on the podcast, Bianca, and speak about what we're speaking about. We've been on lots of different tangents and spoken about a lot of great things. So thanks for having me.
No problem. I'm sure some people listening have taken something away from today. Thank you for being here, and see you guys next time.